And basically, it told that the Soviets, after World War II, had not only taken the German rocket scientists, but they'd taken their mind control experts and their psychic people and had worked with them and had been developing psychic ability. And psychic ability, we used to call it clairvoyance. Now we call it remote viewing. The Russians call it extrasensors. But basically it's the same thing. You sit quietly, you clear your mind, you go into a meditative state, and you throw your mind out somewhere else, and you pick up sensations and sometimes visualizations. Now if you sit down, close your eyes, and picture a South Sea island with the palm trees and the waves lapping and the little grass hut and the birds, seagulls flying by, that's daydreaming. That's not remote viewing, okay? This is why in remote viewing they have to be very careful when they give you a target. If I set you people down and say, okay, we're going to do some remote viewing, and I just flat tell you I want you to remote view the Eiffel Tower, well, then you can sit down, close your eyes, bingo, you got a picture of the Eiffel Tower because you've either been there or you've seen pictures of it. You know exactly what it looks like. That's not remote viewing. So in remote viewing, what I'd have to do is I come up with what they call a coordinate. And it actually started as a coordinate. They'd actually get a longitude and latitude degree coordinate, give them that coordinate, and then their mind would go there, and they were able to study it, because if I gave you the coordinates of the North Pole, for example, and you say, well, okay, I'm there, and it's cold, and it's white, and I see a bear, but he's all white. Well, then, wow, polar bear, North Pole, so you know you're there. But pretty soon they realized you don't even really have to have a real coordinate. So now the coordinate number is simply a number that represents the target. Now, how all this works, nobody's absolutely sure. It's a very strange thing, and it's very metaphysical. Some of you are into this, and some of you are not. My particular understanding is that everything in the whole universe, including this podium, is nothing but energy. It's just atoms. It's all made up of atoms, and they're all jammed together. But if you know anything about science, you know that an atom is 98% empty space. So this thing is basically empty space, but doesn't feel like it. In fact, if I bang my head on it, it's probably going to hurt. So that's because we perceive things and we operate on a 3D material level, and yet everything in the universe is energy. When you have a thought, and you've heard the term thought form, when you have a thought form, that's energy, and it just goes out into the energy grid. And this is why we have all kinds of weird things, like you may be working around and you suddenly think, hey, I think my best friend's going to call me. In about 10 minutes, the phone rings, it's your best friend. This is how we subconsciously pick up on this stuff. Now, some people do it a lot better than others, a lot more naturally. Others have to really work at it. But when they did the research for the Army's remote viewing programs, they found out some interesting things. They found out that every single person has this ability, okay? But now let me tell you, that's like saying every one of you has the ability to play Chopin on the piano. Yes, you do. But most of you could probably do it a whole lot better than me, because I don't play the piano. But think about it. If you'd take piano lessons and then you'd practice day after day after day, pretty soon you could play Chopin on the piano. So it's the same thing with the remote viewing. You think you can't do it, but actually if you really worked at it, some more easily than others, you could actually pretty much get to where you could do some remote viewing. And this is why that they began to study it at SRI. They did these original studies, like this is a airport in Colombia that was one of their early targets. And then so the guy drew this little diagram, and you can see that it's very comparable to the target. Interestingly enough, the Army picked up on this, and at one time actually had a unit of about 25 people that weren't doing nothing but doing remote viewing. But the Army didn't, at the top, the old generals, they didn't think much of this, so they had them headquartered in these little wooden buildings at Fort Meade that during World War II had been bakery school. So they're in these little ramshackle things, but they'd come in, sit in chairs or lounge around and meditate, and then they go do the remote viewing. But oddly enough, it really worked, and they really got some success out of it, and so it continued.